said, Lord Shiva, the deliverer of the hill of Kailasha, having thus been addressed by his dear wife, replied smilingly, although at the same time he remembered the malicious, heart-piercing speeches delivered by Daksha before the guardians of the universal affairs. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When Lord Shiva heard from his wife about Daksha, the psychological effect was that he immediately remembered the strong words spoken against him in the assembly of the guardians of the universe. And remembering those words, he was sorry at heart. To please his wife, he smiled. In Bhagavad Gita is said that a liberated person is always in mental equilibrium in both the distress and the happiness of this material world. Therefore, the question may now be raised why a liberated person like Lord Shiva was so unhappy because of the words of Daksha. The answer is given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura. Lord Shiva is Atmarama, or situated in complete self-realization. But because he is the incarnation in charge of the material mode of ignorance, tamoguna, he is sometimes affected by the pleasure and pain of the material world. The difference between the pleasure and pain of this material world is that of the spiritual world, is that in the spiritual world, the effect is qualitatively absolute. Therefore, one may feel very sorry in the absolute world, but the manifestation of so-called pain is always full of bliss. For instance, once Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Krishna, in his childhood, was chastised by his mother, Yasoda, and Lord Krishna cried. But although he shed tears from his eyes, this is not to be considered a reaction of the mode of ignorance, for the incident was full of a transcendental pleasure. When Krishna was playing in so many ways, sometimes it appeared that he caused distress to the gopis, but actually such dealings were full of transcendental bliss. That is the difference between the material and spiritual worlds. The spiritual world, where everything is pure, is pervertedly reflected in the material world, since everything in the spiritual world is absolute. In the spiritual varieties of apparent pleasure and pain, there is no perception other than eternal bliss. Whereas in the material world, because everything is contaminated by the modes of material nature, there are feelings of pleasure and pain. Therefore, because Lord Shiva, although a fully self-realized person, was in charge of the material mode of ignorance, he felt sorrow. Text 16. The great Lord replied, "My dear, beautiful wife, you have said that one may go to a friend's house without being invited. And this is true, provided such a friend does not find fault with the guest because of bodily identification, and thereby become angry towards him. Lord Shiva could foresee that as some that as soon as Sati reached her father's house, her father, Daksha, being too puffed up because of bodily identification, would be angry at her presence. And although she was innocent and faultless, he would be mercilessly angry because angry towards her. Lord Shiva warned that since her father was too puffed up by his material possessions, he would be angry. And this would be intolerable for her. Therefore, it was better that she not go. This fact was already experienced by Lord Shiva because, although Lord Shiva was faultless, Daksha had cursed him in so many harsh words. Text 17. Although the six qualities, education, austerity, wealth, beauty, youth, and heritage, are for the highly elevated, one who is proud of possessing them becomes blind, and thus he loses his good sense and cannot appreciate the glories of great personalities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It may be argued that since Daksha was very learned, wealthy, and austere, and had descended from a very exalted heritage, how could he be unnecessarily angry toward another? The answer is that when the qualities of good education, good parentage, beauty, and sufficient wealth are misplaced in a person who is puffed up by all these possessions, they produce a very bad result. Milk is very nice food, but when milk is touched by an envious servant, it becomes poisonous. Similarly, material assets such as education, wealth, beauty, and good parentage are undoubtedly nice, but when they decorate persons of a malicious nature, they act adversely. Another example given by Chanakya Pandita is that a serpent that has had a jewel on its head is still fearful because it is a serpent. A serpent by nature is envious of other living entities, even though they may be faultless. When a person bites another creature, it is not necessarily because the other creature is at fault. It is the habit of the serpent to bite innocent creatures. Similarly, although Daksha was qualified by many material assets because he was proud of his possessions and because he was envious, all those qualities were polluted. It is sometimes, therefore, detrimental for a person advancing in spiritual consciousness, or Krishna consciousness to possess such material assets. Kunti Devi, while offering prayers to Krishna, addressed him as a Kinchana Gochara, one who is easily approached by those who are bereft of all material acquisitions. Material exhaustion is an advantage for advancement. Material exhaustion is an advantage for advancement in Krishna consciousness Although if one is conscious of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can utilize one's material assets, such as great learning and beauty and exalted ancestry, for the service of the Lord. Then such assets become glorious. In other words, unless one is Krishna consciousness, all his material possessions are zero. But when his zero is by the side of the Supreme One, it at once becomes in value to 10. Unless situated by the side of the Supreme One, zero is always zero. One may add 100 zeros, but the value will still remain zero. Unless one's unless one's material assets are used in Krishna consciousness, they may play havoc and degrade the possessor. Text number 18. One should not go to anyone's house, even on the consideration of his being a relative or a friend. When the man is disturbed in his mind and looks upon the guest with raised eyebrows and angry eyes. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. However low a person may be, he is never unkind to his children, wife, and nearest kin. Even a tiger is always to disturb. I'm sorry. Uh, However low a person may be, he is never unkind to his children, wife, and nearest kin. Even a tiger is kind to its cubs, for within the animal kingdom, the cubs are treated very nicely. Since Sati was the daughter of Daksha, however cruel and contaminated he might be, naturally it was expected that he would receive her very nicely. But here it is indicated by the word anavastita, that such a person cannot be trusted. Tigers are very kind to their cubs, but it is also known that sometimes they eat them. Malicious persons should not be trusted because they are always unsteady. Thus, Sati was advised to not go to her father's house, because to accept such a father as a relative and go to his house without being properly invited was not suitable. Text 19. Lord Shiva continued, if one is hurt by the arrows of an enemy, one is not as aggrieved as when cut by the unkind words of a relative, for such grief continues to rend one's heart day and night. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sati might have concluded that she would take the risk of going to her father's house, and even if her father spoke unkindly against her, she would be tolerant, as a son sometimes tolerates the reproaches of his parents. But Lord Shiva reminded her that she would not be able to tolerate such unkind words, because natural psychology dictates that although one can suffer harm from an enemy and not mind so much, because pain inflicted by an enemy is natural when one is hurt by the strong words of a relative. One suffers the effects continually, day and night, and sometimes the injury becomes so intolerable that one commits suicide. Text number 20. My dear white complexioned wife, it is clear that of the many daughters of Daksha, you are the pet. Yet you will not be honored at his house, meaning Daksha's house, because of your being my wife. Okay, Shiva speaking to his wife. Rather, you will be sorry that you are connected with me. Purport, there's Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva put forward the argument that even if Sati proposed to go alone without her husband, still she would not be received well because she was his wife. There was every chance of a catastrophe because if she wanted to go alone, uh, even if she wanted to go alone, therefore Lord Shiva indirectly requested her not to go to her father's house. Text 21. One who is connected by false ego and thus always distressed, both mentally and sensually, cannot tolerate the opulence of self-realized persons. Being unable to rise to the standard of self-realization, he envies such persons as much as demons envy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The real reason for the enmity, meaning hatred, between Lord Shiva and Daksha is explained here. Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva because Shiva's high position as an incarnation of the quality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and because Shiva was directly in contact with the Super Soul and was therefore honored and given a better sitting place than he, meaning Daksha. There were many other reasons also. Daksha, being materially puffed up, could not tolerate the high position of Lord Shiva. So his anger at Lord Shiva or Lord Shiva's not standing up in his presence was only the final manifestation of his envy. Lord Shiva is always in meditation and always perceives the supersoul, as expressed here by the words Purusha Buddhi Shakshinam, the position of one whose intelligence is always absorbed in meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very great and cannot be imitated by anyone, especially an ordinary person. When Daksha entered the arena of Yajna, Lord Shiva was in meditation and might not have seen Daksha enter. But Daksha took the opportunity to curse him because Daksha had maintained an envious attitude toward Lord Shiva for a long time. Those who are actually self-realized see every individual body as a temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is his Paramatma feature, is residing in everyone's heart. When one offers respect to the material nature, it is open, not closed to the material body, but to the presence of the Supreme Lord. Thus, one who is always in meditation upon the Supreme Lord is always offering him obeisances. But since Daksha was not very elevated, he thought that obeisances were offered to the material body, and because Lord Shiva did not offer respect to his material body, Daksha became envious. Such persons, being unable to rise to the standard of self-realized souls like Lord Shiva, are always envious. The example given here is very suitable. Asuras, demons or atheists, are always envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They simply want to kill him. Even in this age, we find some so-called scholars commenting on Bhagavad Gita who are envious of him when Krishna sees a man,
Krishna says,
the
Manmana.
when Krishna says, I'm sorry, even in this age, we find some so-called scholars commenting on Bhagavad Gita who are envious of Krishna. When Krishna says, Man manabhava mad bhakta, Bhagavad Gita 1865, always think of me, become my devotee, and surrender to me. The so-called scholars comment that it is not to Krishna that we have to surrender. That is envy. The asuras, or atheists, the demons, without reason or cause, are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, instead of offering respect to self-realized persons, foolish men who cannot approach the highest standard of self-realization are always envious, although there is no reason. Text 22. My dear young wife, certainly friends and relatives offer mutual greetings by standing up, welcoming one another, and offering obeisances. But those who are elevated to the transcendental platform, being intelligent, offer such respects to the super soul, who is sitting within the body, not to the person who identifies with the body. It may be argued that since Daksha was father-in-law of Lord Shiva, it was certainly the duty of Lord Shiva to offer him respect. An answer to that argument, it is explained here that when a learned person stands up or offers obeisances and welcome, he offers respect to the super soul who is sitting within everyone's heart. It is seen, therefore, among Vaishnavas that even when a disciple offers obeisances to his spiritual master, the spiritual master immediately returns the obeisances because they are mutually offered not to the body, but to the supersoul. Therefore, the spiritual master also offers respect to the supersoul situated in the body of the disciple. The Lord says in Srimad Bhagavatam that offering respect to his devotee is more valuable than offering respect to him. Devotees do not identify with the body, so offering respect to a Vaishnava means offering respect to Vishnu. It is stated also that as a matter of etiquette, as soon as one sees a Vaishnava, one must immediately offer him respect, indicating the super soul sitting within. A Vaishnava sees the body as a temple of Vishnu. Since Lord Shiva had already offered respect to the super soul and Krishna consciousness, offering respect to Daksha, who identified with his body, was already performed. There was no need to offer respect to his body, for that is not directed by any Vedic injunction. Interesting point. Text 23. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asango hi ayam purushaha. In the Vedic literature, it is said that the soul is always pure and uncontaminated by material attachment. The identification of the body with the soul is due to misunderstanding. As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one in his pure original soil, original sorry, it is to be understood that one is in his pure original constitutional position. This state of existence is called Sudasattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. Since this Sudasattva existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state, the activities of material consciousness stop. For example, when iron is put into fire, it becomes warm. And when red hot, although it is iron, it acts like fire. Similarly, when copper is surcharged with electricity, its action as copper stops. It acts as electricity. Bhagavad Gita 14.26 also confirms that anyone who engages in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the position of pure Brahman. Mam chayo vibicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samitidhyaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Shraddha symptoms.
Shuddha Sattva.
I'm sorry. Therefore, Shraddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is the transcendental position, which is technically called Vasudeva. Vasudeva is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. This verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudeva because in that state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. To execute unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities or mental speculation. In pure devotional service, one simply serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a matter of duty, without reason and without being impeded by material conditions. That is called Sudasattva or Vasudeva, because in that stage, the Supreme Person, Krishna, is revealed in the heart of the devotee. Srila Jiva Goswami has very nicely described this Vasudeva or Sudasattva in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. He explains that Asuttara Sata or Sudasattva in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. The explanation that Asuttara Sata 108 is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in Sudasattva or in the transcendental state of Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva is also used for other purposes. For example, Vasudeva also means that one who is everywhere or all pervading. The sun is also called Vasudeva Sabditam. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes, but whatever purpose we adopt, Vasudeva means the all-pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 7:19, it is also stated, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Factual realization to understand Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto Him, let's go back here. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes. But whatever purpose we adopt, Vasudeva means the all-pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 7:19, it is also stated, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Factual realization is to understand Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto him. Vasudeva is the ground wherein Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed. When one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure Krishna consciousness or in the Vasudeva state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Vasudeva state. Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Kaivalya, which means pure consciousness. Jnanam Satvikam Kaivalyam, when one is situated in pure transcendental knowledge, one is situated in Kaivalya. Therefore, Vasudeva also means Kaivalya, a word which is generally used by impersonalists. Impersonal Kaivalya is not the last stage of realization, but in Krishna consciousness, Kaivalya, when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is successful. In that pure state, by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., because of the development of knowledge of the science of Krishna, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these activities are under the guidance of internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The action of the internal potency is also described in this verse as apavrita.
Apavarga. Apavrita.
Apavrita, I'm sorry. Free from any covering. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, etc., being transcendental, are beyond material nature. It is not possible to understand any of them with the materialistic senses. When the senses are purified by the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchite, the pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Now, one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? Very good question. The example, as stated by Lord Chaitanya, is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clean mirror, one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.8, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Chetasa Nanya Gamina, or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him. If one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed by Lord Chaitanya, by the Bhakti Yoga process, beginning from hearing and chanting. One can cleanse the heart and mind, and thus one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart. He was always offering obeisances to that Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance or samadhi. This samadhi is not under the control of the devotee, it is under the control of Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, for the entire internal energy of the Supreme Personality Godhead acts under his order. Of course, the material energy also acts by his order, but his direct will is superficially executed through the spiritual energy. Thus, by his spiritual energy, he reveals himself. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.6, Sambhavami Atmamayaya. Atmamayaya means internal potency. By his sweet will, he reveals himself by his internal potency, being satisfied by the transcendental loving service of the devotee. The devotee never commands, my dear Lord, please come here so that I can see you. It is not the position of the devotee to command the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come before him or to dance before him. There are many so-called devotees who command the Lord to come before them, dancing. The Lord, however, is not subject to anyone's command. But if he is satisfied by one's pure devotional service, he reveals himself. Therefore, a meaningful word in this verse is ahoksaja, for it indicates that the activities of our material senses will fail to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the attempt of one's speculative mind. But if one desires, he can subdue all the material activities of his senses. And the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to the pure devotee, the devotee has no other duty than to offer him respectful obeisances. The Absolute Truth reveals himself to the devotee in his form. He is not formless. Vasudeva is not formless, for it is stated in this verse that as soon as the Lord reveals himself, the devotee offers his obeisances. Obeisances are offered to a person, not to anything impersonal. One should not accept the Mayavada interpretation that Vasudeva is impersonal. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Prapadyate, one surrenders. One surrenders to a person, not to impersonal non-duality. Whenever there is a question of surrendering or offering obeisances, there must be an object of surrender or obeisances. Text 24. Therefore, you should not see your father, although he is the giver of your body, because he and his followers are envious of me. This is Shiva speaking to his wife, Parvati. Because of his envy, O most worshipful one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent. Wow, that's a big statement. For a woman, both the husband and the father are equally worshipable. The husband is the protector of a woman during her youthful life, whereas the father is a protector during her childhood. Thus, both are worshipable, but especially the father because he is the giver of the body. Lord Shiva remarked, Sati, your father is undoubtedly worshipable. even more than I am. But take care, for although he is the giver of your body, he may also be the taker of your body. Because when you see your father, because of your association with me, he may insult you. An insult from a relative is worse than death, especially when one is well situated. That's very good uh, information. If, in spite of this instruction, you decide to go, neglecting my words, the future will not be good for you. You are most respectable, and when you are insulted by your relative, this insult will immediately be equal to death. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Talks Between Lord Shiva and Sati. Well, Sati is not going to listen uh, seriously to what her husband says because of her material attachment to her family. And she will go to see her sisters and her mother and father, but she'll see that her father does not respect or give any credence to the bona fide nature of her husband. And therefore, she decides to commit suicide, as she does commit suicide. Okay, so now, thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth canto, the third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Talks Between Lord Shiva and Sati. Unfortunately, Sati doesn't listen to her husband. Most women don't listen to their husband. You know. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. Sati quits her body. Text 1. Maitreya Uvacha. Okay. The sage Maitreya said, Lord Shiva was silent after speaking to Sati, seeing her between decisions. In other words, should I go or should I not go? Right. Sati was very much anxious to see her relatives at their father's house, but at the same time, she was afraid of Lord Shiva's warning. Her mind unsettled, she moved in and out of the room as a swing moves this way and that. Well, she was like walking around trying to decide what to do. Her husband is strongly advising her not to go to see her family, uh, mainly because her father uh, doesn't like Lord Shiva. And if she goes and she sees the disrespect that her father has for Lord Shiva, she might be very badly influenced, so badly that she might even commit suicide, wanting not to have any, let's say, connection to her father, who is so inimical to her husband. So let's see what happens. Chapter 4, Sati quits her body. The sage Maitreya said, Lord Shiva was silent after speaking to Sati, seeing her between decisions, meaning she can't make her mind up. Sati was very much anxious to see her relatives at her father's house, but at the same time, she was afraid of Lord Shiva's warning. Her mind unsettled, she moved in and out of the room as a swing moves this way and that. Well, she can't make her mind up whether to listen to her husband and not go to see her sisters and her father, or to go and ignore Shiva's advice. Okay. Purport. Sati's mind was divided about whether to go to her father's house or obey the orders of Lord Shiva. The struggle between the two decisions was so strong that she was pushed from one side of the room to the other, to another, and she began to move just like the pendulum of a clock going back and forth. Sati felt very sorry at being forbidden to go see her relatives at her father's house, and due to affection for them, tears fell from her eyes. Shaking and very much afflicted, she looked at her uncommon husband, Lord Shiva, as if she were going to blast him with her vision. Whoa, blast him. Powerful statement. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word aprati purusham used in this verse means one who has no equal. Lord Shiva has no equal in the material world in regard to equality towards everyone. His wife Sati knew that her husband was equal towards everyone. So why, in this case, was he so unkind to his wife that he did not allow her to go to her father's house? The distress distressed her more than she could tolerate, and she looked at her husband as if she were ready to blast him with her vision. In other words, since Lord Shiva is the Atma, Shiva also means Atma. It is indicated here that Sati was prepared to commit suicide, although another word of the word Apratipurusha is the permanent, is the permanent who has no rival. Since
The personality was.
I'm sorry. Another meaning of the word Pratipurusha is the personality who has no rival. Since Lord Shiva could not be persuaded to give her permission, Sati took shelter of a woman's last weapon, weeping, meaning crying, which forces a husband to agree to the proposal of his wife. Very nicely said. Text 3. Thereafter, Sati left her husband, Lord Shiva, who had given her half his body due to affection, breathing very heavily because of anger and bereavement. She went to the house of her father. This less intelligent act was due to her being a weak woman. Yeah, women, when they make their mind up, even though it's wrong, they still do it. They don't have the ability to control themselves sometimes. That unfortunately was the weakness of Sati. Purport. According to the Vedic conception of family life, the husband gives half his body to his wife, and the wife gives half of her body to her husband. In other words, a husband without a wife or a wife without a husband is incomplete. Vedic marital relationship existed between Lord Shiva and Sati. But sometimes, due to weakness, a woman becomes very much attracted by the members of her father's house. And this happened to Sati. In this verse, it is specifically mentioned that she wanted to leave such a great husband as Shiva because of her womanly weakness. In other words, womanly weakness exists even in the relationship between husband and wife. Generally, separation between husband and wife is due to womanly behavior. Divorce takes place due to womanly weakness. The best course for a woman is to abide by the order of her husband. That makes that makes family life very peaceful. Sometimes there may be misunderstanding between husband and wife, as found even in such an elevated family relationship as that of Sati and Lord Shiva. But a wife should not leave her husband's protection because of such a misunderstanding. If she does so, it is understood to be due to her womanly weakness. Very important statement. Text number 4. When they saw Sati leaving alone very rapidly, thousands of Lord Shiva's disciples, headed by Maniman and Madha, quickly followed her with his bull Nandi in front and accompanied by the yakshas. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yeah, well, the disciples of Lord Shiva immediately understood that something horrible was going to happen. Sati was going very fast so that she might not be checked by her husband, but she was immediately followed by the many thousands of disciples of Lord Shiva, headed by the yakshas, Maniman, and Madha. The word gata vyataha used in this connection means without fear. Sati did not care that she was going alone. Therefore, she was most fearless. The word anukara is also significant, for it indicates that Lord Shiva's disciples were always ready to sacrifice anything for Lord Shiva. All of them could understand the desire of Shiva, who did not want Sati to go alone. Anukara means those who can immediately understand the purpose of their master. Oh, that's a nice word, anukara. You can see how nuanced the Sanskrit language is. Okay, so text number 5. The disciples of Lord Shiva arranged for Sati to be seated on the back of a bull and gave her the bird, which was her pet. They bore a lotus flower, a mirror, and all such paraphernalia for her enjoyment, and covered her with a great canopy, followed by a singing party with drums, conchos, and bugles. The entire procession was as pompous as a royal parade. Okay, so the disciples of Lord Shiva are trying to help Sati by putting her in uh, a vehicle worthy of a queen and taking her to see Daksha. The disciples of Lord Shiva arranged for Sati to be seated on the back of a bull and gave her the bird which was her pet. They bore a lotus flower, a mirror, and all such paraphernalia for her enjoyment, and covered her with a great canopy, followed by a singing party with drums, conch-shells, and bugles. The entire procession was as pompous as a royal parade. Okay, so she's going in class. She's not going, as a pauper. She's going as a queen. Text number 6, and we'll end with this text number 6. She then reached her father's house where the sacrifice was being performed and entered the arena where everyone was chanting the Vedic hymns. The great sages, brahmanas, and demigods were all assembled there, and there were many sacrificial animals, as well as pots made of clay, stone, gold, grass, and skin, which were all request, I would say, all requisite for the sacrifice. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When learned sages and brahmanas assembled to chant Vedic mantras, some of them also engaged in arguing about the conclusion of the scriptures. Thus, some of the sages and brahmanas were arguing, and some of them were chanting the Vedic mantras. So the entire atmosphere was surcharged with transcendental sound vibration. This transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this age, no one is expected to be highly educated in the Vedic ways of understanding because people are very slow, lazy, and unfortunate. That's a perfect uh, example of my relatives. Okay, so it says, when learned stages of brahmanas assembled to chant Vedic mantras, some of them also engage in arguing about the conclusion of the scriptures. Thus, some of the sages and brahmanas were arguing, and some of them were chanting the Vedic mantras. So the entire atmosphere was surcharged with transcendental sound vibration. This transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very important statement. In this age, no one is expected to be highly educated in the Vedic ways of understanding because people are very slow, lazy, and unfortunate. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended the sound vibration Hare Krishna. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32, it is also recommended Yajna Sankirtana Parayar Yajantihi Sumeda Saha. At the present moment, it is impossible to gather sacrificial necessities because of the poverty of the population and their lack of knowledge in Vedic mantras. Therefore, for this age, it is recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is accompanied by his associates. Indirectly, this indicates Lord Chaitanya, who is accompanied by his associates, Nityananda, Advaita, and others. That is the process of performing yajna in this age. Very nice. So instead of a priest who's performing a yajna in this age, chant all these different mantras, it's better just to chant Hare Krishna. Yeah. He says that therefore, for this age, it is recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is accompanied by his associates. Indirectly, this indicates Lord Chaitanya, who is accompanied by his associates, Nityananda, Advaita, and others. That is the process of performing yajna in this age. That's why whenever we have a yajna, like we did yesterday, I always tell the devotees while the pundit is chanting ha hu he ha wa hu whatever, we should chant Hare Krishna.
Mm.
I'm not making fun, but it's said right here that uh, it says that therefore for this age it is recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is accompanied by his associates. Indirectly, this indicates Lord Chaitanya, who is accompanied by his associates, Nityananda, Advaita, and others. That is the process of performing yajna in this age. That means chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another significant point in this verse. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll go to a program where there's a pundit and he's chanting so many different mantras, but not Hare Krishna. Nowadays, because sometimes they hear lectures by devotees and they know that when they go to a devotee program, they should chant at least once or twice the Hare Krishna mantra. But when they're in the association of non-devotees, they don't. For them, they don't understand that the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is a transcendental vibration and the recommended way to satisfy the Lord in this age. Another significant point in this verse is that there were animals for sacrifice. That these animals were meant for sacrifice does not mean that they were meant to be killed. The great sages and realized souls assembled were performing yajnas, and their realization was tested by animal sacrifice, just as in modern science, tests are made on animals to determine the effectiveness of a particular medicine. The Brahmanas entrusted with the performance of yajna were very realized souls. And to test their realization, an old animal was offered in the fire and rejuvenated. That was the test of a Vedic mantra. The animals gathered were not meant to be killed and eaten. The real purpose of a sacrifice was not to replace a slaughterhouse, but to test a Vedic mantra by giving an animal new life. Animals were used to test the power of Vedic mantras, not for meat. Well, in Kali Yuga, it is forbidden to perform animal sacrifices. Previously, they had animal sacrifices and they had human sacrifices also. But in Kali Yuga, it is not it's forbidden to perform these type of sacrifices, animal sacrifices or human sacrifice. Text number 7. When Sati, yeah.
So you said like you wanted to end here, or
Yeah, we'll end right there. Okay, on text 7. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Are there any questions? So our takeaway today is the transcendental vibration has been simplified in the transcendental, the transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this age, no one is expected to be highly educated in the Vedic ways of understanding, because people are very slow, lazy, and unfortunate. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended the sound vibration Hare Krishna, and in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32, it is also recommended. Yajnai Sankirtana Parar Yajanti Hisume Dasaha. At the present moment, it is impossible to gather sacrificial necessities because of the poverty of the population and their lack of knowledge in Vedic mantras. Therefore, for this age, it is recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is accompanied by his associates. Indirectly, this indicates Lord Chaitanya, who is accompanied by his associates, Nityananda, Advaita, and others. That is the process. That is the process of performing yajna in this age. Well, we should let our own pundits know this and not be so hell-bent on chanting so many mantras that nobody understands anyway. You understand any mantra? I don't either. You just sit there and hear them going, hoo ha hoo wah hoo wah ho, like that. You don't know what they're saying. So it's better just to chant Hare Krishna, which is what I do whenever I go to a program. The mantras are going on. I just chant Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll stop there. Are there any questions or comments?
Guru Maharaj, one question I have.
Yeah.
Recently, I heard from one of the ISKCON preachers that Bhagavan is only used for Krishna. For any other, even the elevated souls, either they use Rudra Uvacha, Rudra Uvacha or Narada Uvacha, Brahma Uvacha. But in today's class, Maitreya did use for Shiva, Bhagavan Uvacha. So that's caught my attention. Just want to share with you, Guru Maharaj, and get your input.
My input. Well, my input is that it says here, when learned sages and brahmanas assemble to chant Vedic mantras, some of them also engage in arguing about the conclusion of the scriptures. Thus, some of the sages and brahmanas were arguing, and some of them were chanting the Vedic mantras. So the entire atmosphere was surcharged with transcendental sound vibration. This transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this age, no one is expected to be highly educated in the Vedic ways of understanding because people are very slow, lazy, and unfortunate. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended the sound vibration Hare Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32. It is also recommended Yajnai Sankirtana Parar Yajantihi Sumeda Saha. At the present moment, it is impossible to gather sacrificial necessities because of the poverty of the population and their lack of knowledge in Vedic mantras. Therefore, for this age, it is recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is accompanied by his associates. Indirectly, this indicates Lord Chaitanya, who is accompanied by his associates, Nityananda, Advaita, and others. That is the process of performing yajna in this age. Well, this should be our statement and our understanding. This is the correct way of performing yajna in Kali Yuga. If you go to some puja and a Pandit is saying all kinds of different mantras. It is basically unnecessary. Right? If you only chant Hare Krishna, that's enough to satisfy the Lord. Ultimately, any sacrifice is meant for the satisfaction of the Lord. It's not for the satisfaction of the Pandit. So if a Pandit learns many, many different mantras and hardly even says Hare Krishna once, basically you're wasting your time. And the puja is not going to really be a success. Okay. Therefore, the takeaway today is therefore, for this age, it is recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, that is the purpose of all the sacrifices, is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the way to do that is by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And who is accompanied by his associates. Indirectly, this indicates Lord Chaitanya, who is accompanied by his associates, Nityananda, Advaita, and others. That is the process of performing yajna in this age. So if we just chant Hare Krishna, then not only Krishna is present, but also his most intimate associates. And they'll be very pleased by hearing the nice chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Maharaj, his question was more around like why Bhagwan was specifically used for Lord Shiva also here, while it is referring to Lord Krishna. Right? We know Bhagwan means Lord Krishna. So why is the word in the verses, in Sanskrit verses, it is referred? I mean, I checked, and then it said, basically it's highest meaning of Bhagwan always refers to Sri Krishna only. Whereas, because Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava, so as an honorary title in Bhagavatam, sometimes it is referred. Those, highest, even some places, even Narada Muni was referred to as Bhagavan.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean like he's the greatest, but he is the greatest devotee. So, as an honorary title, it is used. That's what it is mentioned here. In fact, the Prahlad Muni, as Prahlad Maharaj clarifies this, that the term Bhagwan can be used as a title of honor for great devotees, not to equate them with Vishnu or Krishna.
Well, obviously, some rascals accept the name Bhagavan in order to prove to others that they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unfortunately. Okay, so why should we take the risk of being a rascal? We should always accept to offer complete surrender to Bhagavan Sri Krishna and not to anyone else. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Hare.
The takeaway. The transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna. In this age, no one is expected to be highly educated in the Vedic ways of understanding because people are very slow, lazy, and unfortunate. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended the sound vibration Hare Krishna. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.532, it is also recommended Yajnai Sankirtana Parer Yajanti Sumeda Saha. At the present moment, it is impossible to gather sacrificial necessities because of the poverty of the population. Now, we can just imagine from that statement the very high level opulence of performance of sacrifices in previous ages. When we have a sacrifice, I mean, what paraphernalia do we have? Well, we don't have paraphernalia made in gold. Do you ever see that? No, because we're poor. Right? Even silver, we don't even use silver utensils. What about gold utensils? We use, paper or cardboard utensils, or copper sometimes utensils. So we see, therefore, in this age, it's recommended that people gather together and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that should be, that should give us a good hint of how to perform yagyas. Because ultimately, the purpose is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the way to do that in this age is to chant Hare Krishna. It's not to have utensils made out of copper or even paper, right? And chant so many different mantras. It's to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the best way has been demonstrated by Lord Chaitanya, who recommended sound vibration Hare Krishna. Okay. We'll stop right there and now begin to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the gold standard. You don't have to use any other mantra. That's the gold standard mantra, Hare Krishna. Yes.
Prabhupada has simplified like so much complex things into just
Yeah.
once.
Yeah, and it says that here.
So the entire
This transcendental sound vibration has been simplified in the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, what were you going to say?
In childhood, Maharaj, we used to have a lot of sacrifices. Not a lot, but quite often sacrifices. So, considering from like Brahma's family and all, so the subtle mind was also having some pride, like the Brahmanas are chanting these mantras, although we are not understanding, but the pride was also there. Like we are doing fire sacrifice with all these Brahmanas.
Yeah.
With so many mantras, and we did not understand. Like,
and they're saying, do this, do that.
So many steps, elaborated steps.
Yeah.
Now it is simplified. And that's not so easy as well because it requires a lot of preparations and at the end we are not learning anything. Like it's just
not at all.
Some ritual and no learning.
Some of our pundits do that also. That's why when our so-called pundits start saying the mantras, I tell everyone, okay, we'll chant Hare Krishna also. You've heard me say that? Yeah. Okay, well, all glories to the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and to Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas. Fortunately, we have come in contact with them. Otherwise, we'd be completely lost. Learning how to say so many different mantras, but it's not even bona fide. Yeah. Hare Krishna.